Hello and welcome to the Stringers Podcast number 8. Ocho. If you ever watched Herbie the Love Bug growing up, you'll understand the reference. Kind of, except there isn't a 5 or a 3. Very excited for this week's podcast guest. We have the guys from the Mike on Much podcast, Mike Veerman and Shane Cunningham, at Mike on Much on Twitter, at Mike on Much on Instagram. It's hard to forget that one. These dudes are so rad. We have Greg in co-hosting as well because, well, Greg and Mike are brothers. So it kind of fit. This is an interesting one for me, though, because I have never yet had guests that I didn't know previously. So bear with me as I get to know Mike and Shane. Lots of laughs. And Shane tries to set me up for a date with his sister. No, I'm not joking. No Kylie this week, which is a drag, I know, but it doesn't mean we come up short on events. Lots of Halloween stuff going on in the city this weekend. If you're in Toronto, Friday night, Dragstone Hotel. This is definitely up my alley. Halloween is coming. It is a themed Halloween party based on Game of Thrones. So if you've been into the last season or any of the seasons and you kind of just want to get your groove on, you know, dressing up like you're from that period, if you're part of the Stark family, definitely check it out. Eventbrite is where you can get your tickets. 9:30 p.m. it kicks off on Friday night, Dragstone Hotel. Saturday, do something that I want to do. I'm not much of a club goer, but the Burroughs Haunted Mansion, 639 Queen Street West, starting at 9 p.m. They promise an event like no other in the city. I dig mansions, and I like it when they're haunted. So do yourself a favor. Friday night, skip the long lineups. Put on your best Halloween garb and go check out the Burroughs Haunted Mansion. And then finally, you want to end the weekend like I would end it with like some solid movie watching. Buckets of Blood-tober. Are you a horror film fan? Check these guys out. They are debuting their film, part of the 50-hour film festival. Get this. In 50 hours, they had to write, direct, shoot, and finish their film. 50 hours. It's nuts. 4 p.m. Sunday at the Rec Room, Buckets of Blood-tober. That's what you should be up to this weekend. If you bump into me, make sure you say hello. But without any more delay, Mike Veerman, Shane Cunningham, the Mike on Much podcast guys, coming in hot for episode 8. Kylie, where are you? Where'd you go? I need me my sax. Story. We were recording off the laptop microphone for the first few minutes.
The room was being recorded into the laptop.
Yeah, that's why we were peaking all the time, and it didn't matter if I hit any of the faders. But now
we're going through the board
connected.
Now, baby.
And then I was muted, and I was like, why can't I hear me? And then I couldn't hear Shane.
Man. This is what happens when Kylie goes to her stupid cottage.
Fucking Kylie.
The podcast falls apart.
Completely.
Kylie's selfish. I think that's what we've figured out.
But valuable because You know,
extremely valuable.
We're 20 minutes in and recorded about 30 seconds.
30 solid seconds. Welcome to the Stringers Podcast. We got Mike Veerman and Shane Shanerman. Shane, what's your last name?
Cunningham.
Shane Shanerman.
Close, yeah.
Very, very, very close. Now, this is interesting for me because it's the first time I've had anyone on the podcast that I don't previously know.
Wow.
So we have Greg as a buffer.
I'm the buffer.
Right.
Greg knows us both pretty well.
Well, I heard one of your podcasts, and I heard my name mentioned, and you were like, I know Shane. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, I know of Shane.
You're right, okay.
Because I know Birch.
Right, of course.
So
okay.
I know Birch, so I know of Shane. I hope that's what I said.
Oh, yeah. Clay's worked closely with the Nut over the last couple of years.
We love Birch. He's a pretty prominent character on our podcast, actually.
Can we say Birch? Do we have to say the Nut?
It changes.
Yeah.
On the one that he came in and tried to dispel a bunch of rumors.
Yeah.
Which was just fucking hilarious. It was the nut, that a Birch.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, that's it. All gloves are off. I'm going to defend my name. And I think he did a pretty poor job of defending his name. All these stories are untrue, but really they were all true, just maybe in a less fantastical way.
Yeah.
But still a very true way.
Yeah, he likes to say that every story I say is just an exaggerated version of the truth. But it is true.
It is
but
true.
everyone tells a story in their own way. And
Well,
sees
you gotta
from
make
their
it fun.
perspective. Yeah, but in my mind's eye, I'm telling exactly how it happened. And a lot of the stories about him, too, he's, the nut is blitzed out of his mind. In a lot of so I don't know how his memory's holding up.
From what I understand, he doesn't like to wear clothing when he drinks.
There's a
That
line in a
becomes
famous
optional.
That's
article.
nuts.
Yeah. How do you?
He does have two.
Indeed, yeah. How do you like working with Birch?
Birch is very upstanding within the office walls, I will say. He commands his ship well. He buttons his buttons high.
Oh, yeah.
Top button's always done up.
Always done up. He's great. He's always been really, really chill to work with. And so then it's neat for me to first meet Greg and then meet you guys who know him in a different light. Because I'm like, oh, so you aren't as put together as I once thought.
So is he feared and respected? Just respected? Is he kind of a laughing stock? Like,
I could color this story any way I want. He is well liked and his contributions are well accepted. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah.
you skip the respected part.
His contributions are well respected. I'd say he's respected. I don't work in his
Right.
department.
Yeah,
I don't know
different.
what live really does.
His beard is respected.
His beard's respected.
Yeah.
Everyone loves his sense of style is mostly respected. His sneakers are always respected. Sneaker game on point.
Yeah, he's like a classic. I've seen him a few times. It's like blazer, dress shirt, nice pants, then like massive Nikes on the bottom of his shoes.
So is he sponsored by Nike? Is that
I
the
think
thing?
so. Yeah, Nike and Red Bull. He has a little Red Bull under his desk, like a Red Bull fridge. He's just always tossing around anyone who wants them.
Define sponsored.
Yeah,
Do they pay him money? No, I don't.
but he doesn't pay money for it.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know. That's as far as I know.
He gets contra.
Birch is a well-connected man.
Yeah. Love
So
the Birch.
Mike and Shane both from Much Music.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
It's much, but you can call
just
much
say
music.
Much. It's like the dream of every 11-year-old, I think, to make it to Much.
Sure.
Like
Not
100%.
anymore, but-
No, it totally wasn't my. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
I got home from school in which I saw my friends the whole time, and I sat on my couch on the phone with my friends discussing the videos that were on.
Oh man, it was a cultural, juggernaut. Much music back in the 90s and early 2000s for sure. Much now though is and we work for sort of like a plethora of channels under the Bell Media umbrella. And Much, I think it's absolutely still like a youth channel where it's relevant to like all these Much Studio sort of digital creators, these YouTubers and all that. That's kind of like the direction they've gone in, which is sort of relevant maybe not to those of us that grew up wanting to work there and Rick the Temp and that whole scene and sort of like VJ culture. I think it's just shifted really.
You look at Rick,
Yeah.
he's continued on. You look at George Trombolopoulos, definitely continue his career on.
Yeah, George is the gold standard.
Is he your gold standard?
No, I think I think for the VJs that came out of there in that era, whether it's like Amanda Walsh or Rick the Temp
Well,
or
Jesse Giddings is in the States.
he's done
well.
Hannah
Rick-
Simone.
Hannah Simone's on a huge
I think
show.
Rick was just as because he continued working ET Canada right until like this year.
I guess what we're talking about more is like music journalism. If like for what Much Music sort of was back then, and the idea of like sort of I guess to bridge the pop culture sort of VJ like Cute Rick or whatever, Pretty Girl.
Oh, cute Rick.
I
He's
call
so
him Pretty
cute.
Girl, yeah.
Yeah. And George, I think, kind of like brought something to the VJ realm and now is like kind of moved on to his own thing where he still maintains sort of what he had done and what he'd started.
What does he do now? He throws like house parties or something?
Yeah, he basically does it. He does a show like out of his house, like the House of Strombo, and people show up, they play live at his house, they record it, they film it, it's his own thing, I think, through the CBC. But
Remember we were at
He's good.
Coachella and
He's
he
really
was
good.
just there?
yeah.
It was like, hey, George Trombolopoulos. He was like, hey. And then he just disappeared. He was never seen.
Did he ride down on his motorcycle?
I don't know. He was just there
He showed up
and
at
then
the
he was
house.
gone.
Yeah.
It was very mysterious.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Why was he there? Do you know?
I think he might have been picking up wristbands from Ash, Arkell's manager.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Where was
she had the hookups. We had this house. We rented this house. All right, I let you casually drop. You remember we were just in Coachella and George showed up? So
was cool.
We were.
Yeah, no kidding.
Why
Only
not
at
say it?
Coachella.
We were down there because Arkell's were playing, and then so we kind of piggybacked and parlayed like our podcast, Mike Much, went down there to interview a bunch of people at Coachella, and so we had this we'd rented this kind of ridiculous house. Actually, Burchell had set it all up. He'd found it.
My
we all
guy.
go down there, and then literally George just shows up one day and was like, "Man, Coachella's kind of cool." Like he just rolls into the house and everybody's drinking by the pool, and it's like, "All right."
Did he take a dip?
He did not take a dip.
Well, it felt cool because It was weird because we had like a photo shoot in the desert and we're wearing like all these Top Man clothes. It was a really weird scenario.
Yeah.
I felt like I was famous.
And they use those photos
You're
as like
mostly
online advertisements. You just be on Facebook and be like, Hudson Bay, like shop at Top Man. And they don't like mention the podcast. It's all just you three in the desert, like standing like, in their clothes, like looking hilarious.
Jorts or something?
Yeah. But it's like, get the hot new summer look, the jorts.
In this season. Well, not only do they not mention the pod, they didn't tell us that we would be in this advertisement for Top Man. Like Top Man sponsored us to go down, and then we get home, and then like a month later, Greg just sends to like our message group like a photo of us, and it's like hot new looks for the summer, and it's like me, Max, and Shane in the desert.
Yeah, I was like, Top Man's really getting their money's worth. Like,
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we even got any money for it.
But you got those jorts.
Yeah, I got the jorts.
And man, they're comfortable. I have a pretty solid pair. I was just in California.
I saw an advertisement on Facebook. I couldn't help
Now
myself.
who's bragging?
Hunky dude was in
I
there.
saw these three guys, and I was like, wow. When you're in the desert, I was just in California. I was just outside of San Bernardino. I went down for CalJam, and I packed my jorts. I 100% packed my jorts.
So you wear jorts?
I have a pair of
Nice.
jorts. It's perfect for that, especially in the warm weather. It's like the 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And then on the other side, it's like the 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. if you're like having a beer.
That's California living.
It's California living. I think they invented the jort.
Probably.
I thought I liked them, and then I saw the pictures, and I was like, I look ridiculous.
You're like, oh no, I can't like this.
Well, there goes our chance at a second sponsorship.
But man, I'm showing well. Way to go.
Well, in the comments, someone called me Kevin Smith, so I was like, oh. Because it was on, Instagram.
Oh, you were wearing a hockey jersey.
In the desert. You're a little insecure about your frame.
We talked about the gold standard with George. You guys are like the gold standard for Toronto podcasting.
Is that true?
I'm looking up to you guys.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
reputation's there. How many episodes in are you?
Sitting.
78 goes up tomorrow.
78.
Yeah.
Feeling
dang.
great.
Lights is the guest. Shane for the show. So thank you for saying that about the pod.
Oh,
we really
100%.
appreciate it. And, whatever. It's like just guys messing around like buddies. I don't know why you started your pod, but it's like for us, it was just like we were doing this. It was Max's idea. It's like, let's just do this. And now it's kind of crazy that it's at 78. But Shane does a dessert. That's his thing. So he comes on at the end after the interviews. He's actually on the whole thing now. But this week his
Why
sister.
did that change? No, I'm joking.
Now you have to skip the beginning and the end.
He just wouldn't leave. He's like, I'm staying for the beginning and the end.
I really like this.
I like
it. I want to be part of it.
He brought for this episode tomorrow, he brought his sister on, who's trying to find a date.
Yeah.
So we're trying all sorts of crazy stuff on the show.
Well, she had a bad experience in Vegas where
She was in Vegas.
She was in Vegas. She was supposed to go with my mom. Like, my sister's been single for a long time.
Different kind of Vegas. I got it. You're going with your mom. Gotcha.
But then she met a guy and she thought she liked him. But then the guy ended up, when she got to Vegas, he ended up peeing on her bed. And the police had to bring him back to the place. Like, he was getting a little unruly. So they broke up. So on the pod now, we're trying to find her a man. That's in the next dessert.
Have you ever seen... First of all, the phone's ringing.
Yeah, I thought we were having a caller or something.
Someone's calling in. It's your sister. Stop talking about me.
I got phone lines in the office before I had phones, and then I had to go purchase phones because I'm like, well, if I have a phone line, you gotta have a phone. This might be the first ever caller, and I've just left them hanging.
What's your producer's name? Kayla?
Kylie.
Maybe she was just checking in to see if you're getting it right.
Clay, did you check the levels? Clay, did you set it so it wouldn't record the internal mic? Clay, are you doing it right?
Put the headphone up to the phone.
Let me hear it. Let's make sure it's right. Have you guys ever read I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell?
Yeah.
Oh, what's that guy's name? Tucker Max.
Yes, good one.
This is maybe he was in Vegas. Maybe
it could have been
he
him.
met up with your sister because I'm pretty sure urinating in a woman's bed and then making her feel like she did it was one of his greatest stories.
Yeah, he was really big for a minute there.
Mm-hmm. Was he
In
the
this
one
day
who
and
had,
age, that wouldn't fly.
I don't think so, man.
He pooped in someone's shoe. I think that was another one. And he had a movie.
I remember
saw that. Yeah.
Well, he went a far way with sort of like bro-y, predatory, misogynistic stories. Like people loved it.
Was he like How to Pick Up girls? Or like, did he have that book? Was that what that was?
It was basically like he was always his whole thing was like I can score with girls and then dismiss them, and that was kind of his bit. But yeah, that was like really popular in the mid 2000s.
Had you ever seen how he was in real life though? Like, have you seen an interview with him?
No, is he chill?
What was he like?
No, he's kind of not cool. He had that one picture where he looked cool that he used on the cover, and then in real life he was really.
Don't we all have that one picture just to sell a few books?
But he was like he wasn't very articulate. He had a bit of like a stammer. It was very strange.
It wasn't the guy you're picturing while you're reading that book.
I think he lied about all the stories.
One thing I know about the internet.
Yeah.
No one ever lies.
Yeah.
Everything on it's got to be
But
true.
YouTube Tucker Max, everyone who's listening.
But did he like kind of start that? Like, you remember how Comedy Network had that like show, like Who Can Pick Up a Girl? And
I love that show.
What was
Keys
that
to the
show
VIP.
called?
It's the best show.
Was that kind of like
ever.
based on that becoming popular, like the Tucker Max thing? Like, or was that all
Possibly.
I don't know, was that always there? Yeah, I just remember that show was like hilarious.
With the
Just kind of like, I feel like that show wouldn't even fly today. Like, you can't air that show anymore.
I view you guys as like the gold standard for podcasts. Maybe tell me how you guys got started, how it all kind of came to be, and why you thought, hey, you know what, this is a great conversation between us, but maybe it'd be even better if we let other people listen.
Well, I think it got started because Mike and I took a trip to Cuba together. And while we were on that trip, we witnessed...
Let the rumors begin.
we have to get Kylie to fact check this at the end.
Yeah.
We witnessed two bachelorette parties on the trip, and both of them, the brides-to-be, ended up cheating on their soon-to-be hubby the night before they were to leave. And it was just a fact.
Not with either of us.
I was going to say, how
Shane and I,
for sure.
we abstained from all nefarious
we were
behavior
at the time anyway.
Yeah.
It could have. They just rejected us.
We tried.
Not for lack of trying.
Don't get me wrong. Those women had taste.
Yeah, but I had that Tucker Max book on me the whole time.
But when we got back, like Mike's kind of like a very articulate man, charismatic force, masterful storyteller. Honestly, he is.
My brother's dying laughing.
But he is. Like Mike's, that's his main thing. So when we got back from this Cuba trip, Mike could tell this amazing story and weave it perfectly in a way that everyone would understand it. And, I was at like 3 parties and Mike was telling the story and it would kill every time. And then Max sees this and he's like, we got to turn this into a podcast, like use Mike's kind of gift and you apply it to like interviews so he could tell a story of his own or tell a story off the top of the podcast, which actually is the podcast used to begin with Mike telling a story from his childhood or his past or whatever. And then it just evolved from there. And Mike and Max got together and they wrote a pitch to the people of the powers that be at Much, and they all really agreed with what Max and Mike were saying, and then the rest
Well, that's like, how long did it take you guys, you think, to find your footing? Like, because you have a pretty like rock solid structure now with the pod,
right?
So how long did it take to kind of realize, oh, this is the best way to do it?
Mike completely agrees. He's like, yeah, we do.
There was like,
baby.
I know. Yeah. Little brother, let me talk. Both my little brothers. No, basically it's like it's kind of what Shane said, and it was a lot of trial and error. Max's big thing was like, whenever he would come off tour or whatever, we'd get together over beers and talk, and it would be like I would listen just as much as I would like tell a story, et cetera, et cetera. So in the beginning, we did try some things where I would come on and be like, I'm Mike Veerman. It's like, let me tell you about this time I had a record deal. And then I would go into all the sort of things about the record deal and how it fell apart. And it was kind of more of like that style of pod. And so it started like that. And then it kind of evolved into like Max, because we did a bunch of demos that we showed Much, and then we're able to get it. And then Max, so then it kind of changed as Max and I doing this, what we're doing right now. And then we knew from the start we wanted Shane on because Shane was very kind in saying those things. But he's like one of the best storytellers and super honest, in a way that I don't know anybody that's like him, So it was like when we first started the pod, Shane was super single and he was going on Tinder dates like crazy. I say super single because there was a lot of Tinder stories. So he would come on, and the whole idea was he was the pop culture aficionado because he watches movies, listens to music. So the idea was always, okay, Max, now come on off the top. What have you been up to? Tell us about the tour, Max. I'll explain something from my life. And then the meat was always, or the dinner was always the interview. And we were lucky enough through Max to get great interviews off the top, calling in favors. And then the dessert was always going to be Shane's going to come on and review a movie movie or an album. And it's like right from the start, we're like, Shane, what do you like?
Tell a story.
Yeah.
And then he'd be like, well, I saw this movie, but enough about that. I went on this Tinder date yesterday. And so he would never review a fucking movie, but his stories were so funny that we just loved it. And then so like almost right from the start, it was this great kind of hook. And then the three of us kind of found like our footing together. And then that segment Shane ran with, and I was in it for the interviews because I wanted to talk to people that were doing cool creative shit and to hang out with Max and Shane and goof around. And then it kind of 78 episodes later, whatever, it's laughing.
Whatever, no big deal.
This whole thing.
They said they're buying me a jacket at 80.
Yeah.
I'll Instagram it.
Yeah. Just get me some Top Man jorts and I'm good.
I was helping my friend, one of my best friends is Catherine Stankovic.
Yeah.
And I was telling about the podcast that we're recording, and I'm like, I'm so excited and I'm so nervous because these guys are huge stars and I'm not used to being around stars.
Wait, are you talking about us right now?
Yeah, you guys.
That's outrageous.
And she's like,
we might be known in Etobicoke.
He was talking about Akil.
Oh, I'm having Mike and Shane. Mike has the Mike on Much podcast. It's actually Greg's brother. She's like, oh yeah, I've talked to him from the Hangout before. He's totally cool. You're going to love him. And I was like, can you come? And she said no.
Hey, has she been on your show yet?
We have her booked. Episode will be airing November 14th. I'll put it that
She's great. I actually listened to the episode where Greg was on, but you had the girl that did all the interviews for Live Nation. I'm blanking on her name.
Emily Yeager.
Emily. Yeah. That was a great episode.
Yeah,
man.
your friend.
Yeah.
Thank you for
A lot of
I
Foo Fighters.
a lot of Foo Fighter talk.
A lot of
Yeah.
better talk.
I believe I casted her in a commercial before, actually, Emily, for You Can Change with Mark Myers directed it.
Oh, she was in that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I believe so.
Fun fact.
Small world.
Fun fact.
But yeah, we bonded right away over Foo Fighters, or our mutual love for Foo Fighters.
Well, I remember Shane came in. So Greg is like, although he's my younger brother and has been around for most of my life, he literally, he's doing this, like Shane comes into work one day. He's like, hey, you listen to Greg on the podcast? And I'm like, what? I'm like, Greg's doing a podcast? And he's like, yeah, man. And he's like, he's talking about like the Foo Fighters and all this stuff, made some funny jokes. I'm like, you've already listened to this whole thing? I'm like, how am I the only one out of the loop on this?
Oh, you need to get the other episodes of Greg on it.
I'd love to.
Yeah, episode 2 has Greg too, right?
Yeah. Julie Stewart Binks.
But to be fair, like, I'm not doing the podcast. Clay's doing the podcast. I've been on twice. This is my third
No,
time.
is it your third time?
Yeah.
I said on the way over here that we have to like make our schedules work out better because he makes the conversation better. Like, just having him here makes everything better. And the great thing about Greg and I is we're within a couple months of the same age. Mm-hmm. So then all the references are the same.
And it's good because Greg isn't overbearing. Like, he knows his moment when to pop in and make the joke. And you're like the chatty one.
I am the chatty one.
It's kind of like Mike and I reminds me of. That's why I said.
So which one's the chatty one between
you? And you've got like
on your side.
Oh,
on your side.
Mike.
No, I'm the chatty one.
Mike.
Oh,
like, and Mike has a good radio voice, and you've got that like good voice.
You got a great voice.
Like the whiny Nick Carter voice.
Well, actually, speaking of talent, you were talent when you started with MLSC, weren't you? Weren't you like on air?
After. I was on air for 3 years. 4 years.
What were you doing on air?
I did intermissions. I did broadcast host.
Oh, cool. Like in arena stuff, and then
I did actually funny. I did in arena stuff as well. Like up on the scoreboard, they'd have me doing a couple hits because they thought it'd be cool to mix it up. But mainly broadcast.
So how did you then come to doing the podcast? Is it just like so you're writing, you're directing, you're producing things, and then you're like, I want a platform. I just want to bring people that I've met along the way, like you said, to it, like. Or have you always had like sort of a desire to be on air and sort of have a voice?
Radio was the first thing I ever wanted to do for years, and I did a little bit of work with The Edge on and off, which is Toronto's alternative music station. I did a little bit of work with The Edge on and off. It didn't really go anywhere. I always wanted to do radio, but then I was like 18. I'm like, forget it. I gotta get a serious job. I gotta grow up. I'm gonna be a writer. And that pays even worse. And so I wrote for quite some time. And then that's actually how I ended up at Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. I came in as a writer first. And they're like, oh, you have some on-air experience. And so they brought me in doing like short hits and then pre-recorded stuff. And then I went into doing live games and intermissions. And I wasn't an analyst by any stretch of the imagination. I was just a host.
Yeah.
I was just there to facilitate the actually smart people and throw a little quip in when I could to keep it lively. And I did that for about 3 years. And then I realized, I didn't say it off the bat. I didn't say quit telling me what to do off the bat. But having someone in your ear the whole
you're just going through some
time,
stuff when you're saying
having someone in your ear, you're like, I think I can do this. I think I can storytell. I think I can present these points or facts or show in a way that makes more sense to me.
Like you wanted to be more of a personality and less of a host.
I want to be more of a producer, director,
Okay. Yep.
and less of a host. But I didn't want to be in the live environment, and so that's when I pitched them my first documentary idea. And they're like, "You want a what?" And I'm like, "No, yeah, I want to do a documentary." And it was a sports one following one of their teams, and they're like, "Okay, you can use our equipment, no problem. We'll even let you edit it on our machines. We're not going to pay you, and we're not going to promise you that it's going to go anywhere. Just try it out." And then they loved it, and just because fortune fell in my favor that year, and it ended up being aired through Canada, the US, and then the Western half.
What's
of
his
Europe.
doc called?
That one's called Push to the Playoffs.
Nice. That's a
Which
pretty
was
crazy debut, though.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It still looks like shit, though.
But it's an early win, and
It was an early win.
That's key in like any sort of career, I think.
Yeah, they're like, yay, and then every single contract I've signed with them since has been all doc related. But yeah, that's how the conversion happened.
Shane, when you did Teen Wolf 2 Return of the Wolf.
It was Teen Wolf 3, Greg. Come on.
Teen Wolf 3 Return of the Wolf.
Yeah.
When it was done, did you have that immediate where you're like, this is fucking awesome? Like,
Yeah.
Like
Maybe let the listeners know what Teen Wolf 3 Return of the Wolf is.
Well, I'll let
everybody listening gets that reference.
I'll let the
We're all of a
writer
certain
director
age.
explain it. Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess to explain what Teen Wolf 3 Return of the Wolf is...
Give me the elevator pitch. I want to hear it in 30 seconds. Come on. Hit me.
When I was young, I was part of a show called The Jared Diggs Show. And he had an idea to create a program that follows young aspiring filmmakers making their first short film. So I was like, oh, geez, I better come up with something. And Teen Wolf was one of my favorite movies. And I was like, there was already a Teen Wolf 2 made with Jason Bateman. And I was like, I'd like to make a Teen Wolf 3, which is just, a continuation of where part 1 left off, because 2 delved into the world of boxing. I wanted to stay in the world of basketball, like the original with Michael J. Fox.
You had a vision.
He's on tour.
And it wasn't really...
I wanted to bring it back around. It's like when Fast and Furious went to Tokyo Drift. They're like, no. We got to bring it back to North America.
Exactly.
Let's get some
Course
American
correct.
muscle.
Yeah.
It's not really a parody making fun of Teen Wolf. It's like just a kind of a natural continuation. I play Styles in it, so I'm acting in it. And I don't know, like...
You're acting and directing.
Yeah. And
writing.
There was a little documentary crew following me around how I made it.
Amazing.
And Nathan Fielder actually got his start on this show also, and he made a short film. And so we're both equally successful. That's the point of the story, man.
Our side-by-side rise is actually quite meteoric.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But you can check that online, Teen Wolf 3.
True, but it's like... You are a Much Music Video Award winning director now. So
I am.
Nathan Fielder ain't got that.
Yeah, I did Arkel's video. I don't know how I got it, but yeah.
I have no clue. If only I knew someone in the band, really, or anyone. Which video did you direct?
Well, I met my wife on the first video I directed for them. It's called Where You Going? That's the first one.
No Tinder dates?
No, this was...
face to face.
Well, I met her, and then there was a 5-year break. So I actually had a girlfriend when I met my wife.
You had to wait for her to turn 18.
We've all had that problem.
But yeah, I had a girlfriend at the time when I met her, so I waited 5 years for her to become single. Anyway, that was Where You Go in the first video. The second video was called Drake's Dad. And the third video is called Knocking at the Door.
Oh, and
Knocking at the Door is the one that won.
And that...
Smash it.
I can't take all the credit. I can probably take 20% of the credit because Mark Myers is really the visionary behind all of them. And I kind of just stand there and pretend I'm doing stuff.
well known in Toronto for sure, Knocking at the Door, as it was used by...
across Canada.
Hey, and it was
like
also
the song of the Leafs.
It was the song of Wimbledon. Or no, sorry, the US Open in New York. That was it.
Holy
the tennis match,
smoke.
like on ESPN.
What I love is that I live in Distillery. Part of the video is filmed just west of me, and another part of the video is filmed just east of me.
Yeah.
The basketball court with the wicked
Yeah.
mural on it.
Yeah,
And,
and-
then Underpass Park on the other side.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is like my neighborhood.
Well, Myers
Yeah,
was
that was
close
like a
there,
5-day shoot.
Yeah, and you guys totally had permits for all those places too, right?
No, the cops came by a couple times too. Because
Oh, they do it just like I do it.
Yeah.
Completely. That's how I make films.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean we can't? No, it's for a news piece.
Get the shot.
we're
Get the
good.
shot. No, we're good. Yeah.
Yeah, I turn it off. Beep.
Why is the red light still on?
You
Battery.
heard the beep, man.
Yeah, that shoot was hell. Like, it really made me never want to do anything.
Mostly because of the talent. The band is very difficult.
No, it was just fucking hell. And it was cold, and it was like 15-hour days every day. So
I heard it was a quick turn, right? You said it was 5 days of shooting, which is extremely long to shoot for a music video, because I think the longest ever shot music video was 3. But I guess from concept to output, it was a quick turn for you guys?
yeah, it was like a blur. Like, I don't even remember that portion of my life because I was never sleeping. But yeah, it must have been a quick turnaround. Like, I've completely forgotten how the process happened. But.
Actually, I didn't direct the video. I was just trying to seem important on this podcast.
Don't ask me any details.
I only did I was there a lot overseeing it, but even 20%, I was burnt the fuck out. Mark Myers, I don't know how he did it, because he was like editing it and constantly, and like bringing hard drives into, he works at Vice, like bringing it into his job, and it was like, I don't know, that guy's like Superman, honestly.
And he's got kids at home. He was so he's like balancing family and all that too.
One word.
Crazy, man.
Cocaine.
Yeah, cocaine. Yeah.
I used the cocaine to bring me up. I used the alcohol to bring me back down. That is what we call balanced lifestyle.
I kid. Mark Myers is a genius.
Yeah. And he has a documentary on Netflix actually called Delivery that you should check out.
Yeah.
Actually, we're going to have to chronicle all of these and just be like, what you should watch this weekend. Mm-hmm. That's where we're going to put it a graphic, what you should watch this weekend. Yeah. It just means I got to put my Photoshop skills to the test.
Well, Mike and Shane came on the pod and they just promoted shit. Mostly Jorts.
Well, this is the thing. I'll add something.
You don't know any of these people, but here's what you should watch.
But the one, back when Mike and I, our band is called San Sebastian, and back when we had a little bit of juice in the biz, we got Shane to direct a video for us.
Yeah.
Called Baby. So let's add that to the list.
Oh, yeah, Baby.
It's a great video.
And we can find it?
Oh, yeah. All our videos are still online.
Yeah, but it was a good one. And then because...
Just ask my dad. He watches them every weekend when he's drinking, and he's like, you guys could have been someone. Sorry, go ahead.
And that was like the best video we did. Shane wrote it and it was great. And then...
Young Youth's probably the best one. Which Shane cut.
And then... Oh, yeah, Shane did. Yeah. But anyway, so then that was great. And then Max was like, Shane, you got to make one of those for us. And then, boom. 8 years later.
Doing the video for you actually is how I got the video with the Arkells.
Well, this is a good industry lesson, Work with the little fish, you get the big fish.
There you go.
Just do stuff is a good...
Yeah.
Just keep doing
model.
stuff.
Do stuff.
And that's really, you asked me what was, like, why I wanted to do this. It's just because I think sometimes we get antsy. Like, if you're doing the same thing over and over, or you're just, there's a side of your brain you're not exercising, you just want to do it. Mm-hmm. And that was the first thing I learned, was like, well, just do it. No one's saying you can't do it. Thankfully, I'm in a position where I can afford like a couple microphones, and my laptop can run a fancy program that records it. No, it's
literally only a couple. Me and Greg are like the Beatles right now on one, and then Clay and Shane are on the other one.
Yeah, he's sitting on my lap, which
I'm not complaining.
That is my cell phone in my pocket.
It's a flip phone. That joke makes no sense. It's funny you say, like, you mentioned just do stuff, and you talked about the idea of like being idle, and then like at some point you kind of want to do something more. For me, it was like we did the band San Seb, and we toured and all that, and we deal with the record label, and then when that kind of ended and we burned out, like it was like 2 years where, because Shane and I worked together, like doing sort of similar stuff to you do. Well, remember we'd be in the edit band. I'm like, I'll do something at some point, but I just didn't want to do anything for a long time. But then eventually, I think if you're people like us that work in a creative industry, you eventually are like, I got to do something.
Completely.
And then for us, it's the pod, and it seems like you feel the exact same way, And I think the other thing too, not to like go on about doing things and like whatever being inspirational voice, but listen up, kids. People get really precious about like the work or getting paid or what their position's going to be or their title. It's like, just do shit. Like Shane made that movie Teen Wolf 3 Return of the Wolf and a bunch of other things nobody ever saw on YouTube, but those
that got like 80,000 views, man.
My bad. Those I got to give it the respect it deserves. Yeah. Exactly. They were looking for clips
of Mike's dad.
Yeah, exactly. Crying.
It's like, Shane, you really could have been something.
And those, that leads to you getting a gig, because then even though they're not polished, someone goes, oh, I see the cleverness in a couple of these things.
I thought it was polished.
Yeah, I know.
Don't disparage me, Mike. Come on, we're here to promote each other.
Oh, man.
But that's because you guys both obviously have day jobs, so you're doing this on the side. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like, at this point, is it like having another full-time job?
No, I think
it's a part-time job.
It's just fun. It's something that I look forward to doing. It's a bit of a challenge, because if you do it every week, you have to think of something new to talk about, which sounds easy, but it's actually you got to put a lot of thought into it.
Do you feel pressure to like one up yourself, or you're like, oh, last week was so good, I gotta
every week I try to think of something that's going to be better, and I fail most of the time, but when it's good, it's like feels real. If you see people talking about it on Twitter and saying like, someone messaged me before I got here and was like, oh, I was just listening to the pod and this made me spit out my sandwich. I was laughing so hard. I was like, wow.
Yeah, that person has an eating disorder. But the thing is,
no lower mandible at all.
The Eddie Della Siepe episode. I don't know if
that's what they were talking about. Yeah.
That is Shane's maybe one of the apex of his desserts is the Eddie Della Siepe episode. Would you agree?
Yeah. So that's another thing to watch or listen to is what you guys are at JFL 40.
We were at Just for Laughs in Montreal, and Shane and I were out drinking, and Shane loves The Bachelor. And so the girl that won
it's all coming out, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was a horrible pause, Mike. I love a girl that was on the show The Bachelor.
Sorry. Yeah. I burped. Clay has been kind enough to give us some brew doggies. So the pause made it seem like Shane loves The Bachelor. The fellow.
We're all waiting for that.
So Vanessa Grimaldi. I do not watch The Bachelor, but anyway, she was in front of us getting pizza at this like exclusive party. So Shane ends up, whatever, just listen to the episode, but he ends up trying to fight a comedian named Eddie Della Siepe because Eddie he thought was rude to him. But you need to hear it front to back. It involves a pseudo celebrity and Shane trying to fight a man.
He was hitting on Vanessa, and and I don't know why, but I thought Vanessa kind of liked me that night. And anyway, I wanted to talk to Eddie about it, and I was like, "Hey, Eddie," and he's like, kind of like brushes me off like I'm nobody. And
hasn't he seen Teen Wolf 3?
Yeah, I know.
Have you not seen this? Pull his phone. Yeah, on YouTube.
I'm a Canadian podcasting legend.
I was so excited for that joke. I was laughing before you.
I know. I was like,
so Mike, when you're like, because you cut it. Are you ever just sitting, like, when you're sitting there, are you like, man, I just want to be at home watching Star Trek? Are you like, this sucks, but then you find the joy at the end of it? Or
you promised me you're going to bring up Star Trek. Thank you.
Are you a Star Trek guy?
I'm Star TNG.
TNG's my shit, man.
Buddy, I just finished going through all 7 seasons.
Greg and Shane just left the room, but yo, you and I, let's do this.
3 hours later.
Yeah.
I just finished going through all 7 seasons and in just under 2 months.
Favorite episode?
Iborg.
Oh, interesting. With Hugh.
Hey, Hugh. I love it. Like tugs at every heartstring I've got.
It's a pretty good one.
You know, and one thing and I talked about this actually in the first ever episode with Akil, because the first thing he said, he's like, phone on silent, phasers on stun, and then it just went 10 minutes Star Trek.
I didn't know that about Akil.
Oh yeah. Oh, Akil. He said he'll watch anything on City TV because
such a like a local reference.
Local referencing. I watch anything on City TV, which means he had rabbit ears on top of his TV, and he turned it 3 times, and he got City.
Got a lot of Star Trek growing up. Yeah,
in Michael Dorn and Whoopi Goldberg. But what we had talked about there was the fact that they were really ahead of a lot of issues. But Iborg, I think the ability to bridge that gap against the unbeatable species that was only there to destroy you, and everyone was on board with infecting him and sending him back, and then their human side kicked in. They're like, wait, we got a conscience too? It shows what really could happen.
The whole thing with the Borg is they're a collective. You have no individuality.
Right.
And they found this, human that had been converted to a Borg, but, he ended up showing signs of individuality. So once he became like sort of a sentient individual, they could have sent him back into the collective and basically taken down this massive enemy, or they could let him live as like this individual, and they chose to do or did he decide to go back in?
He decided to go back. They had to wipe his memory of any sort of individuality.
Yeah.
But he knew that the Borg wouldn't chase down the Enterprise as long as they had found him.
Yeah.
And so he had decided to put himself on the line and remove this newfound sense of individuality and friendship with Geordi and all these things. He was going to sacrifice that on behalf of his new friends, which...
It's great. You mentioned Geordi. I remember years ago, Greg and I went to see... so Greg is acting like he's not a Star Trek fan. He loved LeVar Burton and Geordi LaForge, and we went to see Generations in the theater. And the theater's quiet, and everyone's excited. It's the first Star Trek The Next Generation movie. And, like the names come up at the start of the credits. So when it says LeVar Burton, like young Greg just goes, woo! In the theater. It was the weirdest thing. But yeah, I love Star Trek.
Does that.
LeVar Burton on Twitter. Woo!
Your favorite episode?
There's a lot. I mean,
know.
Inner Light probably is what a lot of people say, but I love Measure of a Man, where they argue whether Data is an individual worthy of making his own decisions, because they want to take him apart and try to replicate him. And he's like, I don't want that to happen. And they're like, are you a sentient individual or are you not? So Measure of a Man, Inner Light, there's so many though. I love a lot. And I love Star Trek because it's about ideas. And like you said, it's way ahead of its time.
Completely.
It's a really good show.
And they just tackle some major issues that as a society we had to deal with, and they just were able to isolate way early on and know that these are important for us to be able to move forward. And they present it in a way that, hey, in the future we've already dealt with it in a better way. Even something as simple as the concept of money, right? And they're like, oh no, we abolished money long ago when we realized that we want to focus ourselves on exploration and science
and bettering ourselves. It's like Utopia.
Oh, it's amazing.
I'm sure we'll cut all of this. I mean, these guys are bored as shit.
No, it's totally in. It's staying. I'm not losing my Star Trek population. I'm now on to Voyager. I moved into Voyager.
I'm doing a bit of Voyager right now.
Watched the new show yet? The Discovery?
I have.
Really?
Have you
Is it
watched
good?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, and thoughts?
It's Star Trek, and I'm happy to have Star Trek in my life. Listen, I went through Enterprise. It took me a while to get through it, and it's not good. No. This is already better. Discovery's better than Enterprise. Have you seen Enterprise?
I have seen... Oh, no, I haven't seen it. I've seen a couple episodes.
Scott Bakula's all right, and T'Pol is very attractive. But I've always been into Vulcans, if I'm being honest. Nobody's laughing on the other side. It's literally just me and Clay having our own pod right now.
Worf was a Vulcan, right?
Totally on board.
What's that?
Worf was a Vulcan.
No, he's a Klingon, Greg.
Klingon.
Good God. But anyway... No, but I like the new Star Trek. It's good.
The new Star Trek, I think it's great. How do you feel about what they did with the Klingons?
I'm not feeling it, but whatever.
What'd they do to them?
They reimagined them. So in the original series, known as TOS, to Trekkers, Klingons didn't have the ridges on their head just because they didn't have the makeup. They just had like goatees and they were kind of like dark. And then by the time they started doing the movies, they started like Christopher Plummer was one, and they kind of had the ridges and they kind of looked like modern Klingons as we know. Exactly. And then TNG really doubled down. Same with Voyager, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, and now for this new one,
Smooth Heads.
No, I didn't go back to the smooth heads. They're like kind of look like Dracula type. They're very weird looking now. I mean, Klingons are weird looking in general, relatively. But
and what's with the shiny skin? That's what I don't understand.
I know.
Well, why does it glisten? Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. But do you need to glisten that much? But I love it. The first episode, I was like, I'm not sure. But then they did the double episode first week.
Yeah.
And the second one, I'm like, yeah, I'm on board. And now it's PVR'd, and I'm going through it. And Matt Myra, who I'm a big fan of, has his own Star Trek podcast, is doing the After Trek.
Oh, really?
It's like the talking show on space after it's done. So I highly suggest. He's a nice dude. I've only met him socially, like we only conversed online.
I gotta get on that pod.
Totally chill dude named Matt Myra. Very, very funny guy.
He's doing this for Space Channel?
It airs on Space in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but he's in the
States.
Got you.
It's kind of like the Chris Hardwick Talking Dead type thing.
And we pick it up on Space. Got you.
Okay. He's actually very good friends with Chris Hardwick.
There you go.
They're pals. Matt Myra is on Nerdist, or he was one of the first Nerdist podcast guys, and then their careers kind of blew up, and he became a writer, and then now he's on TV.
Now he's talking Trek
on his own. How do we bring Shane back in? I think he fell asleep.
Any other topic?
You good? You're an anecdote-based podcast.
Sure.
Why don't we go around and yes and?
Oh,
let's play
improv.
Improv,
yeah.
So, they're real anecdotes I want to hear. Should we start with Shane or end with Shane?
Maybe you should start it so that we get a sense of what you're going for.
Ooh.
And then it goes to Shane. And then, so for listeners, it will go, the circle is Clay, Shane, Mike, and Greg.
Okay, I'll start here. I was dating this girl one time. I was like 60. You're in that awkward stage, like 16, 17 years old, where dating isn't what dating is in your 20s. Or 30s. It's not nearly as fun. There's way too many parents around, but you kind of have this thing going. So I have a car. This is the worst way I think I've ever been stood up / dumped. I had this car, my little 91 Honda Civic, and I lived in Newmarket, which is north of the city, and she lived down in Etobicoke, and I was pretty good about coming down on the weekends and coming to see her. And I drove down, and I buzzed because they lived in one of those large apartment buildings. And I buzzed, and they're like, oh, yeah, she's in the shower right now. It's her mom speaking. You would expect a mom to be pretty truthful. We'll let you in when she's out. Little weird. I'd hung out in their place many times before. 25 minutes later, I buzz up again. Oh, yeah, she's just doing her hair. we'll let you in when she's done. And I'm sitting in the lobby like a chump. So I'm waiting, and then I decide to go kind of sit in the parking lot because I'm like, I have a car out there, and I can listen to music. And there I see her sneaking out with her mom and her stepdad into the car. And so there's like this main area, this main driveway we drive in and out. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. I kind of just made myself visible at the driveway. She's ducked down in the front seat, totally, as they drive right past me, and I can see her clearly head between her legs. And I ain't driven all the way downtown. We've been dating for like 3 months. Oh, this leads me to a second anecdote. I'll get to that in a second. So then I just text her on my flip phone at the time, and I think I said that was the worst. Bye. So I made the mistake of then moving on to her cousin.
Oh. Wow.
Dated her cousin for a few months. And I think we're at one of those weird dating anniversaries that not really are anniversaries. It's like we're at 7 weeks and 4 days.
Yeah.
And you better remember this. So I'm like, okay, meet me at Union Station. I'm not going to Etobicoke. Shit's bad news. Waited, dressed up. I had my guest jacket on.
Wow.
It was like this crunchy velvet. I thought it looked really wicked. Probably didn't. I had like a white button-up shirt on. I had like really skinny slacks on. It felt really good. And then one of those guys in the train station is like, do you want a rose? Yeah, I want a rose. You pay like $4. But yeah, I want a rose. This seems nice. It's our 7 week and 3 day anniversary. I better get her a rose.
You're a damn gentleman.
And she left me sitting there.
What?
Man.
Just sitting there. And she promised for like 2 hours she was on her way.
It's
and
a
I'm like,
bad bloodline.
finally, I'm like,
Runs in the family.
terrible bloodline. Twice I was burned. Fool me twice.
What'd you do with the rose?
Shame on me. Threw it in the garbage very dramatically.
It's cathartic.
Well,
Yes. And so I'm working at a Silver City movie theater, right? Just to tie it into what you were talking about. Perfectly, seamlessly. And back then, I worked the podium. So my job was...
Stub ripper.
The stub ripper, yeah, to put it bluntly. So when someone walks out,
Very aggressive name.
When they walk out, they go, okay, here's my ticket. And they usually walk to the washroom, come back out and let them in. So there's this man, he's walking out. He's in his like, mid 40s, and he's going to the woman's washroom. So I'm like, sir. No response. I'm like, hey, you. Person turns. I go, that's the woman's washroom. The person goes, I know, I'm a woman. And I don't know what to do. I'm realizing that this is a lesbian with a mushroom cut. And I don't know what to do. I just say, I'm sorry, I thought you were a man.
Unashamed. Pulling through.
Honesty's the best policy.
Yeah, and it was just a very weird moment.
Yes, and if we're talking about low places we've been on account of being broken up with,
How did you not pick up on that, Shane? I thought I said a trend.
You tried to set a thread.
I said a thread.
Well, no, he dated the mushroom cut lesbian for 3 years after that.
Figured.
And to see this ring?
I hear you have an upcoming kid. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a lesbian woman.
Her girlfriend will be very proud.
Oh man, I was with a girl for a long time, and she had left me. We broke up. I was pretty young, but we'd been together for a long time. I was kind of in this band with my brother Greg over here, and I'd written a bunch of songs about her. And so she breaks up with me, and I'd never really been broken up with before in any way that was significant or that like I would care about. So I never understood when people would go into like a weird like spiral of depression, like I can't go on. I was always like, oh, people are being so dramatic. But then when it happened to me, I went into the spiral, and so like I quit drinking, and I was living on like yogurt and water, and my brother was really
Sounds
embarrassed.
like it's improving your lifestyle.
Oh, I would never looked better. I'm not gonna lie.
I did yoga.
I was doing yoga.
I had carrot sticks all the time.
Yeah, there's all these photos of me shirtless, which I would never do now because like my body, I have the torso of ET. It's a nightmare. So I'm like, I have all these. Anyway, Greg was like, "You're really like it's
Gregory."
photo." Yeah. That's what my dad says to us now. But anyway, so Greg is like, you're embarrassing, bro. I'm like, I don't even want to play gigs anymore. Like, I canceled her shows because like I can't believe the songs are all about her. But why it's significant is because in that break where I was in this sort of like sadness, I was trying to find people to talk to that maybe had gone through what I'd gone through. And Greg was young, never had his heart broken, so he just thought I was a fool and embarrassing. And I'm like his older brother, so I'm supposed to like be a rock, but I was not. No, I was like mashed potatoes. Shane over here.
Bag of milk, bud.
Shane had been dumped by a girl who had gone to Belize on a vacation and fell in love with a local. So he had his heart broken, ripped out, and I hope that didn't ruin his story because that's a great story as well. Yes, and. So I started talking to Shane a lot because I was like, he gets it. He'd been through this like the year before, and our other buddy, Matt McPeak. And so the three of us kind of formed this kind of group of guys that had either been dumped or recently been dumped, like Peak and myself, and we called it the Lonely Hearts Club. Whatever. You got to name stuff. So what would happen is Peak and I would get together.
We have a clubhouse.
We built a clubhouse.
Yeah,
we're three guys hanging. We need a name.
Lonely Hearts Club. There's no girls. We all start looking really good to one another. But anyway, so we would get together every Wednesday and watch Lost. That was like our thing, me and Peak. And Peak's like an athletic, like bros bro. And because we'd been broken up with, it was that episode. Did you ever watch Lost?
First season and last episode, and I think I understand it all.
So there's an episode called The Constant, and basically this guy Desmond has to go, he's going back in time, but his whole life is basically based around trying to find the love of his life, this woman Penny. And she's like kind of like, you don't care, Desmond. She'd left him, right? He goes back to the past and he tells her in the past, listen, things are crazy, but I'm going to call a number from the island in 3 years from now. And if you still love me, answer that phone. So it cuts to him like on the island, or he's on a boat actually, and he's trying to get the number, and his buddy Saeed sets up the line, and we're watching this, and he's ringing, and it's ringing, and he's like, is she gonna answer? Does she still love me after 3 years? And she picks it up, and it's like Christmas, and her hand is shaking, and she's like, hello. And he's like, Penny. And she's like, Desmond. He's like, Penny, you answered, you still love me. She's like, Desmond, where have you been? I've never stopped loving you. And they're having this exchange like in this crazy moment. And basically like they're talking. He's like, you still love me? He's like, I never stopped looking for you. And she's like, I've never stopped loving you. And it's this amazing moment. And then the phone cuts out and Saeed's like, I couldn't keep the connection going.
I'm starting to cry.
And Desmond looked at Saeed and he goes, it was enough, brother. And I look over at Peak, and both of us, like fucking tears are streaming down our cheeks. And I was like, that's a good friend right there. You know, we didn't say anything because it's like, you don't acknowledge it. You just both stare straight ahead and you let the tears come and let Lost wash over you and Desmond and Penny. And that's my story of woe. By the way, I ended up marrying that girl that dumped me.
Wow.
Yeah. Wedding ring on the hand.
3 years later, he called her.
Yeah. Danica, do you still love me? Mikey, I never... Is that your imitation of my wife?
Yeah.
Of your sister-in-law?
Mikey!
Yeah.
Yes, and Mike's great heartbreak was great for me because basically what ended up happening was he was so heartbroken, he busted up the band that we were in for a long time that just was kind of like not doing too much. And then I went out, met these two cooler brothers, the Dawsons, and I was like, dudes, let's start a band. And then I brought in our drummer of that old band, the Racket, Ted, and we just started making music. And then Mike eventually got back in, but we went on to be, you know,
Greg didn't want to let me back in.
He was worried about the content material, the songs you wrote.
Yeah, no, we went on to be very mildly, or what would you describe it as? Very like unsuccessful San Sebastian with a music video directed by our good friend Shane, and then it ended up launching his career as a MMVA award-winning director. So I mean, your heartbreak, it really
it led to a record deal, multiple music videos, several
awards,
sort of
accolades.
No, not true.
Not for us, but for Shane.
Oh, for Shane, yeah. Shane, it's been great for you, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it led to the band. Side story about Greg. So, if I may jump in, yes, and Greg, like, you know, lived next to me in the room in the hallway that we grew up in, and I'd started playing music, and I wanted to start playing shows. I was like 20 or something, and I was like, "Hey, can you like play bass?
Can you learn something like quick?"
Yeah, exactly that. I'm like, I'm going to book a gig in a month. And to Greg's credit, he like figured out the songs on bass. We sat down, we learned it all. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, I brought him along. Like he's like my little brother. It's like an Oasis thing. It's like we're in the band together. So we were in that band, we were in the Racket, and then when like the band broke up and he was like, screw you, dude, like in your yogurt and your water and you're lost. He went and found these Cooler Brothers, and I'd like gone on this trip and I'd come back. I'd had to discover myself again. And I come back and I see him sneaking out with like his bass out of the house. And I'm like, where are you going?
Tell Mike.
And he goes,
I am Mike.
I go, where are you going? And he goes, oh, I'm going to jam. Like, who are you jamming with? He's like, the Dawsons. I'm like, how is it? He's like, it's pretty cool. It's kind of like the Strokes. I'm like, oh. I'm like, you guys need like a singer? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, Sean's probably doing the singing, but if something comes up, I'll let you know. And then he leaves, and I'm like, that motherfucker. I'm like, literally, I brought him along.
Right now.
Yeah, and then eventually, after 2 weeks, Sean didn't want to sing, and that was my in.
Yeah, the whole time Mike thought he was teaching me a thing or two, but turns out I was the one teaching him something.
That sounds like the end of a serial podcast. Like, you have, what was the one on CHFI? This is Lovers and Other Strangers. No, never listened.
No, what?
I'm alone on this.
Yeah.
Saturday
You might be
night after the Golden Oldies on CHFI.
After the girl drives by with her head
strangers,
in.
and they tell like these. No.
just holding on to your rose, listening.
Oh yeah, I was still in my crushed velvet black Getter.
At that point, you're just crushed.
So I take it, I'm just guessing here, you're a single man now?
As of right this moment, I am.
Wow.
He just got a text on the flip phone.
The time that this is being recorded, I am single. I have not been single since that relationship.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say. I've been in other relationships since that relationship. We should start like a love line.
Yeah. The heart stringer.
The heart stringer.
Shane, just
copyrighted.
the ideas are firing.
We call him Shane the Brain. We don't, but other people did in high school.
Someone did. Sarcastically.
We need a promo cut. We need a director.
So let's call Mark Myers.
I'll do 20%.
How did you guys first meet, Mike and Shane? I know how Mike and Greg first met.
Yeah.
Family things.
Well, I met
just came
Mike,
home one day.
I met Mike at a bar. That was the first time I physically met him at Time Out Bar and Grill. And we shared the same girlfriend, not at the same time, but like a different, like
That we know of. This is also
apart.
the girl that left for the dude in Belize.
But the best connection is Greg and I were like,
My bad.
Greg and I were like best friends in high school. At least I like to think so. And then he was always talking about his brother, and then his brother got in a VJ search, and I was like, holy shit! Like I didn't know it was actually possible. Like I always thought contests were rigged. Mm-hmm. And then when someone I knew got into Much Music through the VJ search, it kind of opened up this window of possibility that maybe I could follow that route. And then one day, I had made a documentary when I was very young about my mom's cheating boyfriend, and Mike had seen that. And one day I saw Mike at this Time Out Bar and Grill, and Mike approached me and he's like, I just want to say that, the documentary you made was pretty cool or whatever. And then we started talking. So we did have a weird period where then I started dating his ex-girlfriend. And I feel like Mike he might deny this, but I feel like he really hated me during that period. And the reason I feel that way is because Greg would always say my brother hates
He hates you. Well, because he'd always be like, oh, is Mike coming up to him? No, Shane, he hates you. You're my friend.
Well, none of this was true.
Well, I would get really nervous because sometimes Mike would drive Greg and I to the mall. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to crack some
That's how long we've known each other. Yeah.
Cruise the mall.
This was 2 years ago.
I was single at the time, okay? You know what it's like. But I'd be all nervous, and I'd have some jokes prepared, and I'd say them in the car. And Mike wouldn't even now Mike is very good. If I bomb a joke, Mike will help me out with a nice, hearty, fake laugh. But at this time,
friends do. That's a good friend.
He just leaves me hanging, and it's just like the buzzing of the car. And I'm sweating like a pig. I'm nervous. I'm embarrassed. And then I get out of the car, and Greg's like, you bombed that entire car ride.
Well, it's funny because there's always a little bit of, not animosity, but you guys are just weird around each other. And then Mike and I were living together with our friend Dan Hamilton, and at like a house in Hamilton we called the Veerman Mansion. And Shane came over once, and we all had just gotten in, we just discovered Arrested Development.
Great show.
And then so Shane came over, and we're all like, let Shane watch this. This is the fucking funniest show ever. And Mike's like, yes. And we watched the first episode or two, and Shane was like, this isn't a funny show. And then Mike was so angry. He was like, how is this not a funny show? It was it was really cathartic. And they fought. They were screaming at each other for about 2 hours.
We were supposed to go to the bar, but Shane and I's debate over whether or not Arrested Development was funny turned into a 3-hour debate. And all I remember is being like,
well, Mike goes, that's like saying you like Elf or something, like saying Elf is good. And I'm like, I love Elf. Because I actually really, I grew up watching Elf. And I liked it.
Yeah. And by the way, I love Elf too. I was actually trying to kill Married with Children which I know you also.
I
love.
also love
I
that.
know.
So you're like, well, what's funny? You're like, Married with Children. That's hilarious. And you're like, no, it's not.
And then you called me a comedy snob, and that was like one of the 3 major fights we've ever been in. To be honest, like I think a lot of our group, whether it's Max, Shane, and myself, other people, like Greg has really kind of like brought us all together. You know, like Max came to us through like Greg's best friend Dan, and Shane and Greg were best friends, and then we were all living together. And you just kind of find like-minded people that make you laugh genuinely, and that you can fight with, and then go drink with, and. You know, that's basically how we came together. And now we're going on what? Like, that trip to Cuba was like our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah. Really, we're all best friends. Actually, even the way that they heard the podcast where I was on is because Birchall listened to it. And then we have like a 25-person Facebook message group. And he posted in there, he's like, Greg's claiming that he started the Champagne Boys. Thoughts? And then it just led to a bunch of messages.
And Greg got people defended him.
Yeah.
Hey, that was going to be my next question. Because you kind of said that Greg is the glue that holds people together. I was going to ask 2 things. First, did he found the Champagne Boys? And 2, what Saved by the Bell character is he? Really, when you look at the friendship group, which one is Greg, really?
He did say Zoiks a lot in high school.
He did have that perm for a bit as well.
We did have an encounter with Screech,
you met
though.
Dustin Diamond.
Diamond, yeah.
I forgot about that. That's a funny story.
Just quickly, I don't want to get off topic. But,
yes, and?
This is the off-topic podcast, actually. I'm going to rename it after this.
That's actually a good name for a podcast.
We should talk about this.
Yeah.
This is
a new idea.
Side pod.
Yeah.
I did something very stupid here. So I recorded...
First time?
Yeah, first time for everything.
Just cut,
Sir, it's the ladies' bathroom.
I was known as the video guy growing up. This woman, she's kind of like my stepmom's niece. She gets married and she asked me to videotape her wedding. I videotape the wedding, but there's still like 20 minutes remaining on the end of the tape. My friend Sean Menard, Greg and I's friend Sean Menard, calls us up. He's like, Screech is performing in Toronto. I'm like, this is great. I'm going to film it. So I bring my camera.
Completely allowed.
Yeah, to film Screech's set. And it's, you know, it's not bad. But then he spots that someone's filming him, gets security to confiscate my camera. Fuck. They take the tape out, give me the camera back. I'm like, I got a wedding on that, Screech. And he's like, don't call me Screech. It's Dustin. I'm like, Dusty, come on. You know it's Screech. Everyone's calling you Screech. And I'm getting in a fight with Dustin Diamond. And it was a really awkward scenario. And I never got the tape back. And it's been weird between me and the bride ever since.
Because they don't have a document of their wedding.
It's
let alone you
horrible.
and Dustin.
Yeah, I know.
Think friendship
Justin
ruined?
still has that tape. Watches the wedding.
Yeah.
Or just watches it over and over again. Like, look at that.
Just watching the
it's
set.
game tape. He just wanted the game tape. He didn't care. Yeah.
But now I am trying to think what Saved by the Bell character you are. Jeez. I would you be like Max?
The guy who owned the Mac?
The guy that worked at the Mac?
think you're most like him, honestly.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at magic.
It's interesting. Well, I don't know if Greg's the glue that holds us together now, but the point is that
He totally is. No, we're running with that.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it
completely.
But he definitely was like the central piece that brought everybody together.
Yeah.
Greg's a connector of people.
Connector of people.
Just like he brought us together.
Yeah, we're here now. Look at this.
Oh my goodness. My friendship
is
group
what I do.
just keeps friendship group. What am I in? Like,
Clay, you want to hang out Wednesday? No, I have friendship group.
I have friendship group. It's very important. What do you guys do in friendship group? Oh, drink beer and talk shit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's actually pretty perfect.
Should we add him to the Champagne
That's
Boys
what I was
group?
saying. The
We do
newest
have a
ad.
policy kind of like if we meet someone, we just add them to the Champagne Boys
Just
group.
there forever.
Is that really a policy at that point?
Well, it just happens. Like if our one friend Dan is drinking and we just hung out with some like random stranger, we'll notice that he's been slipped into the Champagne Boys group.
Max does it a lot too. Max is bad at that.
You did it with AJ and Al. They ended up working out.
Max is
Well, I knew though.
Right.
Max is a classic, like, man, like I love people. Like, let's bring people in. Like, I remember the Raps were playing Indiana, and I had just gotten my place in Hamilton with my fiance at the time. Also the one that busted my heart up 10 years ago when I was watching Lost.
Created some great music out of that, though.
That's right.
Ruined a band, but formed a way better band.
Yeah, and great
Bitch,
music.
I Hate You is a great song.
Yeah, that's went to number one. Nowhere.
Mohawk College Radio.
Yeah, Mohawk College Radio. So I'm like, hey, everybody, I got this like big TV, as like people do, like when they're getting their own place and, I don't know, splurging and spending money they shouldn't spend. So I invite everybody over and I like look over over, and there's this dude with like this 6'3" dude with this huge beard and long hair, like hanging in my new place. I'm like, who the fuck is that guy? Greg's like, oh, Max brought him. He's Max's buddy. I'm like, Max's buddy. I'm like, Max. Like, who is this guy? He's like, it's Dave. You know Dave. He's from around the scene, man. He's from around the music scene. I'm like, I don't know this lumberjack like from anybody. And now he's
scaring the shit out of my guests. Honestly. Check his pockets.
And he's just cracking beers, hanging out. I mean, he's a Raps fan. He kind of knows his stuff. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll play kind of cool. But it's like, you could have asked me in my own mind, like if you to invite randoms. And it's like people from the neighborhood are just coming in because Max saw them on his walk over.
That's like the year before, like when the Raps won that first magical run, like they made the playoffs. Game 1, and I had just moved in with Max that year. So I live with Max and our friend Al.
The Brooklyn series.
Yeah, the Brooklyn series. So then anyway, Max is like, we're having a Game 1 party. It's great. And so I figured it's going to be 10 of us maybe from like the Champagne Boys. And then it's like, it was just Max people start coming. Like and Max had just bought this house. Like his mortgage broker came, who was like, and like his lawyer, like just like guys. And the lawyer came in. He was like a 65-year-old, like a 60-year-old man came in. He's like, who wants to bet on the game? And everyone's like, who are you? Like it was like, what's going on? And Max was like, it's cool. Everyone's great.
Yeah.
And it turned out.
For the record, Dave, big guy, great guy. Love him now. Buds, friends.
It always works out.
Jump cut to your wedding
buds.
and best man.
That's right. It's true. A controversial decision, but he delivered a hell of a speech.
That being said, we did check his pockets before we left for the night.
Yeah.
We were worried about firearms.
Yeah, he did steal $1,500 from me, but he was a nice guy.
He paid it back.
Yeah, in
He
increments.
had this great idea. He said all I had to do was invest $1,500, and in 3 years it turned to $30,000. And I got 17 workers under me, who then got 17 of their own workers under them. It was great. We're going to sell millions.
Is that pyramid scheme? See, well, I always hear pyramid scheme, but I don't quite know how pyramid scheme works. To be honest,
friend, very close, like one of my best friends growing up. His family got into this one that they're like, it's great because people, you know what? They need their phone line anyway. They need their natural gas anyway. All you have to do is just sell it at our rate. And I was like 13 at the time. I had no pull with my parents, and they were trying to sell me on it. And they brought me one of their meetings, which I'm pretty sure the guy at the front wore a hood. Like, it was really freaky, but they gave free food at the end. And they were like, no, Clay, you can do this. You can just go to school and get your friends. I'm like, you're not fucking buying in. You want me to sell your fucking internet? I don't know. Probably wasn't internet. It's probably just phone line.
It's probably a good deal. He's just a Bell representative.
Yeah.
What is this scheme? And it's like, sir, we just want to give you fast internet.
Yeah, my dad got involved with that stuff.
With the Ponzi scheme?
My dad's growing up, he's like the biggest, like, I don't take bullshit, don't fall for a scam, like best advice dad ever. When anything's fishy, he figures it out. But then he went through a weird phase when he was like in his early 50s. He's like, Shane, your friends are going to use deodorant and shampoo and all this. I'm like, you don't know my friends that. But he's like, they're going to buy it
that
anyway.
Greg guy.
Yeah.
Reeked for 3 months
With the
straight.
exception of Greg. But
He eats deodorant. But.
so he's like, sell it to your friends. And I was like, Dad, I'm not going to sell it to my friends. And he's like, well, look at this person's life. And it was this I can't mention their name, but he's like, look at how good their life is.
It was Tony Robbins, but
they had this big house and these cars and stuff. And then years later, it came out that these people were living well above their means, actually borrowed $10,000 off my sister behind our family's back without knowing. Tip didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
And then we kind of had to like kick down their door and get the money back from them. So, yeah, it's... don't fall for those Ponzi
A little
schemes.
shade. I once worked for a door-to-door vacuum sales company, and what they did...
I heard that really sucks.
that was the one joke we had. They would send out scratch and win tickets in the mail. Everyone would win, but to claim their prize, they had to I had to go to their house with this $2,000 vacuum and show them why it's the best ever. By the way, it was shit. Like, half the time you dump shit on their rug and it wouldn't pick it up. I sold one in like 3 months that was returned within like 24 hours.
What was the commission on that?
$800, but then I didn't get it.
Wow.
Because it was returned within 24 hours. Like they had buyers, and we had to inform them about buyer's remorse. Like if they asked, they're like, well, what's the return policy on this? Well, if you really regret it, which you won't, because it'll do everything you ever want. Like we had this one thing where we like show how powerful it is, and we put this little plate on the sucker and had a handle on it. We could pick the vacuum up by it. Look how well it sucks. It doesn't mean it picked up dirt. It was terrible. And so after like 2.5 months, I'm like, guys, you got to pay me something. I've been like banging down doors day in and day out. Half the time people just feel bad for you. And so they give me $80 of gas money. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then I actually didn't quit. I got a call for a job I had applied to.
I got fired. I sold one fucking vacuum that got returned after 8 months.
And they fired. They must have just liked my charm. That was the closest I've ever been.
But when you thought you sold that vacuum, did you go that night? Like put like $100 down at the bar? You're like, we're having a night. I'm getting paid.
I went to my girlfriend at the time and said, we're paying the bills. We're paying. We didn't.
And then she dumped you right after.
She slept with my best friend.
What?
Is that true?
Yeah.
You've had the worst life I've ever heard. Like relationship wise, this is
No, I think you're talking about the vacuum salesman. Tough gig, man.
But yeah, I had like this really good friend. I was living in Richmond Hill at the time. It was like the first girl I had ever lived with. I'm like, this is great. I went away on my first business trip. I was in automotive at the time, so we went to like sport compact shows. And so I was in Ottawa for the sport compact shows with a bunch of my clients. And I got a call from the people who lived upstairs. They're like, there's a car in the driveway. You're not home, are you? I'm like, no. They're like, this is the license plate. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And we can hear them. I'm like, that's great. And that was the end of that relationship.
So are you still friends with the guy?
No, I actually didn't I didn't do anything. Like, I didn't get mad at him. I didn't talk to him. You just kind of delete him off your phone.
Yeah.
Or you do what most people, you just change phones and don't tell him, hey, just got a new phone, need everyone's number.
Well, you were due with that flip phone, too. So
that flip phone, it was going,
had to
Razors
go.
were like...
It was a good excuse to get a real phone.
Anymore.
You wanted to send a message, but just...
It was time for an Ericsson.
Was that a double entendre?
Yeah.
But yeah, I suggest you listen to this week's dessert. I think I might have somebody for you.
So let's actually let's spread the reach of this gospel that you're sharing with people. Let's get the good word of your sister out there.
Honestly, I want you to go for her.
Tiff,
She's a young 37.
That's perfect.
Never been married. No kids. Owns a condo.
Owns shit. Didn't drink till she was 35.
What?
Yeah.
True.
But then she went nuts. Yeah, it's a problem.
But she's no prude. She drinks now.
So here's the real question. If we go on a date,
Yeah.
can I podcast about it afterwards and she can podcast on Mike on Much afterwards?
They'd have
Of
you both on
course.
mic.
It'd be the best.
It's going to be like Blind Date, where they kind of pull them aside afterwards. They're like, at dinner, I thought he was pretty nice. I don't know why
This'll be
that's
awesome.
my voice in it, but, at dinner, she seemed pretty nice. But by the time we got to the carnival rides, I was a little worried about my ability to whatever.
I like that you're bringing her to the carnival, but go on.
Well, you do you know the Howard Stern show? Like, do you listen to it?
Once.
Okay, well, Fred Norris.
Does it help me?
This
Pamela
is
Anderson
just
was
a
on.
story. Like,
I wasn't tuning in for Howard Stern.
Fred Norris.
But I love that it's also like you tuned in to listen to Pam Anderson.
Yeah, totally. I'm pretty sure they posted a picture on
Okay.
So you
their
share that picture while you-
website.
Sure.
And I'm like, this is what she looks like now. Still got it.
Canadian icon, though.
week.
Let's not
Yeah, it wasn't
disparage
even-
Pam.
Go
She's a big animal rights person. So
I was
let's.
in California, and I swear I saw
Sorry,
Kid
Shane.
Rock.
Oh, really?
it's fine.
Yeah, we're driving through the hills. We're kind of winding the roads, my brother, myself, and his girlfriend. And I swear I saw Kid Rock. I'm like, that's fucking Kid Rock. He's got to be. And I didn't yell anything at him because he was like in a bathrobe and jorts and this wife beater, and he was getting into his like fucking Mercedes and driving away. I'm like, yeah, and a hat. And I'm like, that's got to be Kid Rock.
Go
Fred
on.
Norris from Howard Stern show. I'm the only one not drinking beers here, too. So I don't know the level of everyone's at.
Our levels are good, bro.
He met his wife of 30 years off a contest that Howard Stern ran called Dial a Date. They went on one date, 30 years later, still married.
It was like a gag contest, though, right?
It was a bit,
Yeah.
but they took it seriously, and it ended up obviously
They fell in
working
love.
out. Yeah.
So are you saying that this week's dessert on the Mike on Much podcast is a bit?
What I'm saying is, I might have found your.
You guys should
next
go on
girl.
the date. You'll be featured. Like, it'll just be good or bad. You guys will.
Yeah,
I
think-
talk about it.
I think
it's
this-
like when Simpsons and Family Guy have like a cross episode.
At the very worst, it's a fun gimmick. At the very best, you found your
We're all at the
soulmate.
wedding.
Imagine that.
Imagine if Shane was your
Podcast
brother-in-law.
live.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Max performing.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh,
I
he'd
think-
have to.
I think I'd totally be down with Shade as my brother.
Yeah, I like this.
Would you be down with Clay as your brother-in-law?
Absolutely.
Do I then get in the Champagne Boys?
Well, that's true.
If you marry in, you're in, bro.
Yeah, you got to marry in.
We can't kick you out, actually, if you marry it. Or we got to kick you both out.
Tag team.
Okay. Hey, dude, you want to date my sister? Tag team.
Well, the Raptor season is coming up.
Wait, speaking of the Raptors and Kid Rock, Mike has a good Kid Rock story from the MVAs and Vince Carter.
Oh, true. Yeah. So years ago,
This is amazing. I just want to hang out with you guys all the time.
when I first started at Much, I'd maybe been there like 2 months. I was literally fetching coffee, working 4 hours a day as a unit assistant back then. Now I would just be an intern or whatever, but I was very lucky. And so every year when the MMVAs would start, they would gather a bunch of people in the building, and they call them wranglers, as people know in the industry. So it's like a wrangler would be like, okay, so we've got like Maroon 5 or Fall Out Boy or whomever coming through, guests at the MMVAs or nominees, and you would be responsible for getting them around the building because the show takes place in the parking lot and we know the building. That's how the theory goes. So everybody volunteers. The woman that she had the power. She was the gatekeeper that would assign. Her name was Siobhan. She was like an older sassy lady, but like
With a name like Siobhan, I hope she was sad.
Yeah, and I got on her good side like real early because I'd been in this VJ search that Shane mentioned. She kind of had like an affinity for me, so I was like, she was like, "You were gonna wrangle this year?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "This is like the dream. I'm at the MMVAs. Like we're the Hamilton dudes. This is the fucking Mecca." So I'm like, I'm a huge NBA fan. Would it be possible for me to wrangle Vince Carter? Oh. And she's like, "I'll see what I can do, honey." So I get
a sweetheart.
I get the assignment. I'm getting not only Vince, but I'm getting Jerome Williams. So I'm getting JYD and Vince Carter. I'm doing both of them. They come in. JYD's there first with his wife or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And then Vince is coming through, and he's got like 3 of his boys. He's got like a manager and then like 2 of his friends or whatever. Vince is single at the time. And I realize immediately JYD wants to go up to where the food is, and Vince wants to like meet other celebrities. So I immediately am like, I need to split. I can't do them both because they don't really hang out like anybody you work with, right? Mm-hmm. So I end up finding a junior wrangler, like even more junior to me. I'm like, "Hey, would you want to take on Junkyard Dog?" But I felt bad because Junkyard Dog was so nice. He'd arrive first, and I was like, "I'm Mike. I'm your wrangler." Blah blah blah. And the minute I'm
handing you off
in a second
because I'm a huge Vince Carter fan.
I sold him out so hard, and the look on his face, he immediately knew what was going on, and I felt terrible for JYD. But hey, we all make our choices. So I end up with Vince. We end up hanging out, and this is the year that Kid Rock and Pam Anderson are engaged. And so they're at the MMVA. She's like a Canadian darling. Kid Rock's hot at the time, and they have their own dressing room. So Vince in this episode or this MMVA's was to go on stage and dance with Lil Bow Wow. He's gonna like bounce a basketball, all this stuff. And so we went to Bow Wow's room. He's like, "I want to play video games with Bow Wow." So I take him over to Bow Wow's dressing room, and then then we do that for a bit. And then Bow Wow's got to go like prep, and he's like, "I really want to meet Pam Anderson. Can I do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let me like talk to the Wranglers." I'm like, "Shh." I'm like, "I got Vince here, and he wants to come by and say hi to Pam in her dressing room." And they're like, "Shh, yeah, come by, check it out." So I go by to her dressing room.
Roger, you got the green light.
Roger. Pam's ready for Vince. So the door is shut, and her Wrangler, my counterpart, is outside of the door. He's like, "Hey." I'm like, "Hey." He's like, "It's going to take a second." I'm like, "Okay." I don't know what they're doing in there. Whatever. Who cares? Eventually, Vince and his buddies are like excited to like go in. So eventually the door opens, and I see Kid and I see Pam. I do not go in. The Wranglers stay outside of the dressing room. So Vince and his like dudes go in. Yeah. They're in there for, 5 minutes, and then they come out, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, but like Vince, who's probably at the time like a 25-year-old dude or 26, I don't know what he was at the time, but he's like, they come out and they were giddy teenagers. He was imitating Pam's like chest, like with his hands. Yeah. And they were all giggling and like found it so funny. And I was like, these guys are literally like my like idiot buddies. Like we're all the same, The last thing I'll say about Vince, and the story's gone a little bit long, but also that year, do you remember Puddle of Mud? Uh-huh. They were performing. So that basketball, so Vince was supposed to go on stage. He did go on stage, dance with Bow Wow. He had a basketball that he like dribbled between his legs, like some Wilson basketball. After they perform on air, we all walk off. I somehow end up holding this basketball. Like, so I've got this kind of like keepsake. His manager, like another manager came around, a woman, she goes, Vince is a really great guy. If you ask him, he'll sign that basketball for you. So I'm like, "Hey, Vince, I'm a huge fan, blah, blah." He signs this basketball for me. Shit. We end up in the stairwell at 299 Queen Street West, Much Music. It's 5 floors. We're on the 5th floor coming down from like where the VIPs are. We're coming down the stairwell. Puddle of Mud is going up the stairwell toward their dressing room. I'm holding my basketball like a little kid. I'm with Vince Carter. I'm with his dudes. One of the guys from Puddle of Mud pops the ball out of my arm, catches it. They keep walking, and the guy goes, "Just been punked by Puddle of Mud, yo." And I was like, what the fuck is, I'm like, this is like, and, but I also want the ball. I'm bringing this back to Hamilton. And like out of a fever dream, Vince sees what's going on, that I'm being bullied by Puddle of fucking Mud. And he goes, "Hey!" And everything in the stairwell just stops. And he looks at Puddle of Mud and he puts his hand up and he gives like, "Throw the ball back." And they all sheepishly kind of like, their shoulders sink. They toss the ball back to Vince. Vince hands me the ball. And then I just kind of nod at Puddle of Mud. And then we continue on our way.
Did you feel like the biggest loser ever at that point? Or like cool?
Simultaneously the biggest loser ever. And then also triumphant that Vince was my hero on the playground after getting bullied
your wingman.
by Puddle of Mud. And to this day, I have that basketball signed by Vince Carter.
He was your fucking wingman. He came through. He's a good friend.
I've had a lot of celebrity experiences, like luckily working through much and like just doing those like sort of, wrangling jobs. And, you get a mixed bag of people. Vince was genuinely like cool and kind and fun and got it. And he's a smart guy and he was just really nice to be around, which is the first experience. It was my first ever experience around a celebrity. So Vince for life, man. I never booed him. For you Toronto listeners.
I did.
There you go.
Hey, that's fine.
I'll admit.
Hey, hurt people hurt people.
But see, first of all, genius. I'm very hurt.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Here we go again.
It's a little bit of revisionist history. You were kind of pissed off at him a little bit.
I was hurt. It was the first time I'd ever he broke my heart. He was my gateway drug into the NBA. Like I was out on sports. Greg and I used to wake up every morning when we were kids and watch Sports Desk, if you guys remember that.
Of course.
Like
Everyone
we were
did.
big hockey guys. I like loved the Canadians and Stefan Lebeau. Greg loved the Calgary Flames and Theo Fleury. And then at around like
It's true.
Still do. Yeah.
7:30. I watched him back to back.
Yeah.
Sports Desk every morning.
yeah,
That was
totally,
great.
100%. And we'd eat our cereal. But around like 12 or 13, I was like, I'm out on sports. I'm going to learn how to play this guitar. Like I was just like, I wanted to be alternative to like what I'd grown up doing. At around like 1920, I came back because I'd heard that like the next Michael Jordan was playing in our backyard in Toronto, which is Vince, obviously. Anyway, long story long, like Vince, once I started watching basketball, I was like, holy and I was never into like the Michael Jordan era or like, I remember the Patrick Ewing shoes were a big deal, but I was like, Vince showed me through him that the NBA game is like beautiful. It's like a violent ballet. It's like, it's simultaneously like combative, but also like spectacularly sort of, like I said, balletic, or if that is a word, is that
No,
a word?
that's definitely a word.
Yeah.
You didn't just make that up, Mike. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
exactly. Yeah. 3 steam whistles in. Balleic is my favorite word. So anyway, so when Vince left and got traded to New Jersey for a bunch of bullshit and Aaron Williams and Zoe and Eric Williams and a draft pick that became Joey Graham, I was just really disappointed. I didn't boo him. I didn't.
All right.
But I was angry.
I feel like you told me that you were like pissed off and like booing him, and then later you were like, I don't know why I was like that, but you came to your senses before a lot of people did. But I do feel like you were booing him at that time. But
It was all a blur, man. I just been dumped.
The hate was real.
I was living on yogurt and water. We can't remember what happened, man.
Now, Raptors all the way.
Raptors for life till I die. Yeah. But what I learned in those lean years, when I was rooting for Lonnie Baxter and Robert Archibald, was that, and Nate Huffman, if you will, is that I needed to find other NBA teams. That's how I became an NBA fan, right? Because but Toronto, I'm a huge Kyle Lowry fan. I think he's got some attitude issues, but why did I say it like that?
This
I don't
new
know.
character.
Yeah, I was
Jerry Lewis is back.
Kyle, what's it do with Kyle Lowry?
I was reading about preseason. Kareen or someone was talking about the preseason Raptors, the way they're moving the ball. They haven't moved the ball this well since the Jalen Rose, Daniel Marshall days. That's what they're saying. So speaking of the lean years.
I lived through those years. But yeah, anyway, I'm a huge Kyle Lowry fan. I love DeMar DeRozan. It'll be very fast. Here's what I'll say. DeMar, Kyle, our roster, very good. We could talk at length about this or a Star Trek The Next Generation episode. But I would say this is the most valuable piece we have on the team, and that's Masai Ujiri. He's invaluable. He's a top 5 executive in the NBA, number 1 in my heart. And I think that we could lose any player, and as long as you have smart leadership, and I think this applies to any business or endeavor, if you have smart, inclusive leadership that sees the whole chessboard and acts accordingly, they're not going to always hit home runs, but you always understand the thinking behind their choices. Masai is that, and we really haven't had that as long as I've been a fan in Toronto. There's always been inexplicable decisions made. Everything Masai's done, I've always been like, I get it, or that's clever, or how'd he pull that out of his hat? I would be terrified to lose Masai over any player we have, and that's a fact. Or that's how I feel.
They going all the way this year?
Like all the way where to the second round?
Yeah.
All the way to the second round.
No. I mean, whatever. They see Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Final, then you always got a puncher's chance. I'd love to see them make the finals in my lifetime.
I think because Cleveland's kind of out of sorts. They have so many new players.
Cleveland will get it together.
All it takes is a LeBron injury.
I know. Well, okay. So barring that, though, Cleveland will get it together, probably be in the finals. But if LeBron goes west this summer, then it's wide open. And then it's like, I do think we'll be in the finals.
Boston's brand new Cleveland. I don't know. It's kind of like a weird year in the East where it's like there's two clear powerhouses.
Yeah.
But they're both so new that consistency could...
Are you considering Boston a powerhouse?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not feeling that. I'm not scared of them.
I think they were a powerhouse like up until
Before they made those
July
moves.
1st.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be great.
they
Brad's
look-
team is a genius. We'll see.
They looked amazing,
Yeah.
and then it just kind of fell apart through it the summer.
Yeah.
It has been quite the conversation. I want to save more for the future. I hope I get the chance to do this again. But to end things off, well, especially if we have a date lined up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That should be the one thing that definitively comes out of this.
Yeah.
Is a date.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I brought up the Raptor season starting. I have 2 seats to every game.
You just
I
invited
could
me
use
to
a
the
friend.
home.
Can I come?
Yeah, you're going to the home opener.
Greg and Shane
I'm
both
out,
just
yeah.
trying to get the ticket. He's trying to bring your sister to on a date.
Oh, yeah, her, yeah.
Rock, paper, scissors.
No, Tiff would go nuts.
Rock,
If
babe,
you
or
took her
scissors?
to a game,
Yeah.
that'd be amazing.
Epic, babe.
Yo, that's the date.
Raptors game.
When?
Let's
We
set
break
up.
it down. Can't be home opener. I have another date sitting to my right for the home opener.
Player
Greg?
alert.
Yeah.
Then they go on, I believe, a 2-week roadie.
They do.
The longest roadie of the season happens right after home opener.
Playing a lot of good teams in the West. It's going to
And
be
so
brutal.
let's look at November.
Okay.
So we'll see what comes out of this.
That's a little too long. Should they just get dinner?
I don't know if Tiff can wait that long. Maybe,
She'll be married by the end of October. Yeah.
yeah, maybe you go on a pre-date to see if she's worth the Raptor ticket.
Oh, come on. Now you're
Where's your sister?
Now she's not. She's going to miss out on
Come
the
on.
ticket.
Well, vice versa. It's two-way street.
That's true.
You know.
Fair.
Like, you don't want to be forced to
Listen,
go.
if she backs out, you can come with me.
Okay. She's not that great. She's got frizzy hair.
Okay. One last thing before we go. I would love to hear. It sounds like you came up through the music industry. You came up, Shane. You came up through the film side of things. Mm-hmm. Each of you, I love hearing like those one pieces of advice. And I know we're like, now I'm going back to format. We had all these giggles and laughs, and we took the conversation 90 different directions. But I love hearing if there's something that's rung true that you were told earlier in your career, or you were told maybe even in school, that you're like, you know what? That person said that, and you just want to give them some props. You just want to give them some recognition.
Okay, so growing up, I don't know how or why I came to this, but I had this quote above my bed by Calvin Coolidge, and it just talks about persistence, and it's like, nothing will take the place of persistence. Genius will not. There's plenty of fables about unrequited genius, all this stuff. And it lists all these things that people typically associate with success, but nothing will replace persistence. And I always just thought about that. Like, it doesn't matter how good I am as long as I always persist and try. And then, like, you know, I didn't even graduate high school, anything, but I was always persistent with film and trying and pursuing my dream. And now I'm doing what I want to do. So, you know, I know everyone's like, if I can make it, anyone can. But seriously, like, I truly believe that. And recently I saw the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton, and he had the same quote in the movie. The beginning, Michael Keaton's character is listening to Calvin Coolidge repeat this quote. I was like, wow, that's cool. And he became one of the most successful people of all time, the founder of McDonald's. Over to you, Mike.
That's great. I like that. Over to you, Mike.
Yes, and I've been very fortunate to have like a bunch of sort of like mentors. I've been very lucky because you hear stories all the time. People that go into our business and they work for like a crazy egotistical boss or somebody that's like not very welcoming or warm. I've been very lucky to have a lot of good ones. So there's almost too much. But this one guy I worked with named Jason Ward was a producer when I first started, and he had sort of gone, I was PAing a lot of his shoots. He was directing commercials and things like that. And one of the things he had said to me about like when he decides to like sort of work with somebody is he's like, you can be like the most talented person in the world, but if you're a dick, he's like, I won't work with you. He's like, but if you're a good person, he's like, and you're competent, he's like, I'll work with you. He's like, if you're good at what you do and you're a kind person, you'll work forever. you will literally work forever in this business. So for me, like being lucky enough to work in TV and like, you know, direct a couple commercials or whatever, and then, you know, doing the pod and being in the band, the one thing I've noticed about people that have been around the longest are it's always people that are like kind and treat everybody above them and everyone below them, like with respect and like understanding, and then also show up and do your job and do it well. Which gets back to, is it the Woody Allen quote? It's like 90% of success is showing up. That actually is proven pretty true too, because for some people it's just hard to even like be consistent, you know. So it's like just do things, and ultimately, you know, if you're affable and nice and you're good at your job, you'll never go without work. And I think that's proven true for me.
Greg, kind of the unheralded co-host,
Yes,
of Stringer podcast.
and, yeah.
If there's one time you're going to be a guest, this is kind of your shot to be like, you're the bridge. You're a guest and you're a co-host. So yes, and this shit, please.
Yes, and the one thing just for myself, I always just kind of just whatever, you know, it's that thing of just do whatever, like do the thing, even if it scares you, you don't know what you're doing, just say yes to everything. So it's like I've kind of been lucky enough to get certain opportunities where I'll just, even like, good example with Mike being like, I need a bass player, and I didn't really know how to do it, but I'll be like, yeah, I'll do it, and then you force yourself to figure shit out. So it's like kind of put yourself out of your comfort zone and just say yes to everything. And even in our business, it's like some people come to school and they don't want to be a PA. It's like, no, go be a PA, because then you're going to meet this other PA who's going to go on to do this, and then they're going to, you know, it's just like say yes to everything, do everything, and then it'll all start rolling from there.
And it goes back, I think, to what Mike said earlier. Don't be worried about what the title it is.
Absolutely.
Like, don't be concerned. If you get to be on a set, enjoy the fact that you're on a set. If you want to go out and make a podcast or start a band or direct Teen Wolf 4...
It was Teen Wolf 3.
I know, but we're waiting for Teen Wolf 4.
Right.
I'm still...
Someone out there will make it.
It's in production. It's called Teen Wolf 4. It's Wolf Time, but yeah, continue.
Just please go out and start it. If you want, you know, someone to give you a little bit of help, if you want someone to give you a little bit of information, if you have tons of questions, just ask. There's tons of people out there that think it's just cool to talk to other people about shit they love. That you can just ask them, you know, what kind of guitar did you buy? Where did you start out? You know, what kind of camera should I buy? Should I invest in something that's this much money? You know, is a MacBook Pro okay? Or should I get something fancier? Tons of people are willing to share opinion. Maybe more than should, but they're there. So just ask. And that's what I love about all you guys. I think it's pretty incredible. Like, I work with Greg every single day. And I told him on the way over here, I'm like, you are the best flat out editor I've ever worked with. He's like, oh, no, I'm not. I'm like, yeah, you are. Yeah, a lot of it, I think, plays into the fact that we have the same vision when we look at stuff. But communication is easy, and he does everything and then some. He blows me away every single day. I have, like, the best podcast hosts in Toronto, if not Canada, sitting across the table from me. You guys are awesome.
Wow. How many of those bone shakers have you had?
3 times 3 is 12.
Man, I want to date you now.
Raptors tickets, compliments,
Hey,
roses.
we're on the road for 2 weeks, but after that, if your wife's not too busy,
Absolutely. Yes,
He'd like he'd like to bring her to a game.
Oh, it's her.
will she drink? You're not.
She's pregnant. You don't want to hang with her. That bore.
And on that note, guys, please be good to yourself. And as I like to end every podcast, eat your vegetables. You guys are fucking incredible.
Oh, thanks for having us, man. Honestly, that was great. That was a lot.